December 6, 2009, Susan Cox Powell disappeared from her home in West Valley City, Utah. And let me tell you, this case is straight out of a true crime fever dream. She vanished without a trace, leaving behind 2 kids, a sketchy husband, and a mountain of questions. And yeah, that sketchy husband, Josh Powell? Let's just say the guy's middle name might as well have been Suspicion. From the moment Susan disappeared, all eyes were on him. Why? Because the family drama that unraveled afterward was the kind of toxic soap opera you'd binge-watch in one sitting. This wasn't just another missing person case. Oh no. This was a story about betrayal, obsession, and ultimately tragedy. As investigators dug deeper, the details that surfaced were chilling. Josh's erratic behavior, his disturbing past, and his inability to give a straight answer to even the most basic questions. He became the prime suspect faster than you could say, red flag. But here's the kicker. Despite evidence piling up against him, Josh somehow managed to skate by without any charges, for a while at least. That is until 2012, when everything exploded in the most horrific way imaginable. So who was Susan Cox Powell? Well, she was born on October 16, 1981, in West Valley City, Utah. Her family was loving, hard-working, and deeply rooted in their faith as members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Susan was bright, ambitious, and a go-getter. She worked as a cosmetologist and later at Wells Fargo Investments, carving out a good life for herself. She had dreams, she had goals. She was the kind of person you'd root for. And then there's Josh Powell, born January 21, 1976 in Puyallup, Washington. Josh's life was basically a cautionary tale in dysfunction. His parents' marriage imploded in the early 90s, thanks to his father Steven Powell's abusive behavior and rejection of the LDS Church. As a kid, Josh wasn't exactly winning most likely to succeed. We're talking animal cruelty, violent outbursts, and even a suicide attempt as a teenager. Yeah, not great. Josh and Susan met in 1999 at an LDS Institute of Religion class in Tacoma, Washington. They hit it off, started dating, and tied the knot in 2001 at the Portland, Oregon temple. At first it seemed like a fairy tale, but real life came crashing in, hard. Financial issues, Josh's controlling tendencies, and oh yeah, living with his creepy dad Steven didn't exactly make for wedded bliss. Steven Powell had a history of inappropriate behavior, and that dynamic brought an extra layer of dysfunction to an already crumbling marriage. But wait, it gets worse. When Susan went missing, everything unraveled. This case went from mysterious disappearance to, hold up, what in the actual hell is going on here? So buckle up, because the twists, turns, and dark secrets surrounding the Powell family will leave you equal parts horrified and fascinated. Susan, as they settled into married life in West Valley City, Utah, the couple welcomed 2 sons, Charles in January 2005 and Braden in January 2007. Despite these joyful additions to their family, underlying tensions began to surface. As Joshua's controlling behavior became more pronounced, the relationship between Susan and their son trumped their pride. The sons in turn professed a trauma tie. It became heavy. Stephen became increasingly problematic as Stephen developed an obsessive fixation on Susan. He engaged in disturbing behaviors such as filming her without her consent and expressing inappropriate feelings towards her. This dynamic forced Joshua and Stephen to move out, to distance themselves from Stephen's advances. The tension within the family persisted, reports indicate, that Stephen would follow Susan around the house and invade her privacy by spying on her while she used the bathroom, or stealing personal items like underwear. This environment contributed to the strain on Susan and Joshua's marriage as they struggled with financial issues and Joshua's reluctance to attend church service with his family in the years leading up to her disappearance, Susan documented her concerns about her marriage through journal entries and letters to friends. She expressed fears regarding Josh's controlling behavior and noted threats he made about their future if she should. In a letter dated June 28, 2008, she warned that if something happened to her, it might not be an accident, even if it appeared that way. This documentation would serve as critical evidence in understanding the dynamics of their relationship and the potential dangers Susan faced. On December 6, 2006, Susan Cox Powell attended church services with her two Braden at their local ward of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The family was known to be active members of the church community, which played a significant role in their lives. After the service, they returned home to their residence in West Valley City, Utah. This day began like any other, with no indications of the events that would soon unfold. In the afternoon, a neighbor visited the Powell house and observed Susan lying down for a nap. After reportedly feeling unwell, this visit marked the last known sighting of Susan by anyone outside her family. After the neighbor left, there was no further communication from Susan. The timeline indicates that she was last seen alive shortly after this visit, creating a gap that would later raise concerns among her family and friends when she failed to appear at work the following day at approximately 2:29 p.m. on December 6th. Susan made her last phone call to a friend. This call did not raise any immediate alarms. However, it would later be noted as a significant point in the timeline of her disappearance. The content of this call remains unclear, but it was an ordinary conversation that did not indicate any distress or unusual circumstances. This final communication would become critical in piecing together Susan's last known activities before she vanished. Later that evening, Josh Powell claimed that he took Charlie and Braden sledding after leaving Susan at home asleep. He stated they went on a camping trip to Simpson Springs campground in a remote area of Utah's West Desert around midnight. This claim raised immediate suspicions due to the freezing temperatures that night and the impracticality of camping with young children under such conditions. Additionally, neighbors reported seeing Josh return around 8:30 p.m., which contradicted his timeline of events regarding the camping trip. When police arrived at the Powell home later that evening, they found Josh with Susan's cell phone in his vehicle and several items that would later be scrutinized during the investigation. On the morning of December 7, 2016, as the two went back to bed, Zocher reported seeing Josh return around 8:30 p.m., which contradicted his timeline of events during the investigation. On the morning of December 7, 2016, Susan's absence was noted when she failed to drop off her sons Charlie and Braden at daycare. The daycare provider became concerned after not being able to reach either parent after several attempts to contact Josh and Susan without success. The daycare provider contacted Josh's mother, Tarika Powell, and his sister, Jennifer Graves. Alarmed by the situation, they went to the Powell home to investigate. Upon arriving, they found the house quiet and unresponsive, given the circumstances, and their inability to reach anyone inside Tarika. And Jennifer decided to call the police. Their actions initiated a critical response from law enforcement as concerns grew that the family might be in danger. The West Valley City Police responded promptly to the call about the missing family. Upon arriving at the Powell residence, officers forced entry into the home due to concerns that the family may have been victims of carpet monoxide poisoning. Once inside, they discovered signs of a struggle. 2 box fans were blowing on a wet spot on the carpet, which raised immediate suspicions about what had transpired in the home. In addition to this unusual scene, Susan's purse, wallet, and identification were found inside, indicating she had not left voluntarily. The police noted these findings as critical evidence in their investigation. The absence of Susan and any indication of where she might be heightened their concerns regarding her safety. Later that afternoon, around 5 p.m., Josh Powell returned home with Charlie and Braden. After claiming they had been sledding, upon his return he was greeted by police officers who were already investigating Susan's disappearance. During this encounter, officers discovered that Josh had Susan's cell phone in his vehicle, with the SIM card removed, a detail that raised further suspicion about his involvement in her disappearance. Additionally, police found several items in his vehicle that would later be scrutinized during the investigation. A generator, blankets, a gas canister, and tops. These items were inconsistent with his claims of having taken the children sledding during questioning at the West Valley City Police Department later that evening. Josh insisted he did not know where Susan was and maintained that she was at home when he left her for the camping trip. However, inconsistencies in his statements began to emerge as investigators probed deeper into his account of events following Susan's disappearance. Police conducted interviews with her eldest son, Charlie Powell. During the interview, Charlie stated that Susan had gone camping with them, but did not return home. This statement raised immediate concern among investigators regarding the accuracy of Josh's claims about their activities. Josh's account was crucial as it provided insight into the family's dynamics and suggested that Susan was indeed with them during the night of her disappearance. Investigators recognized the need to assess the reliability of Charlie's statement further, given his young age and the potential influence of his father as part of the investigation. Law enforcement executed a search warrant at the Powell residence on December 9, 2002. During this search, they discovered blood evidence on the floor near a damp sofa where fans were blowing, indicating an attempt to dry the area. Of a subsequent DNA analysis confirmed that one blood sample matched Susan's DNA, while another sample was identified as coming from an unknown male contributor. Another key piece of evidence found during this search was Susan's letter, in which she had expressed concerns over the marriage, how there was no attraction between the couple, rather just infighting. This was the same letter where Susan had stated that if something were to happen to her, it wouldn't be an accident. Her husband and his family would be responsible. These pieces of evidence significantly shifted the focus of the investigation toward Josh Powell, as it contradicted his narrative that Susan had simply vanished without a trace. In the days following Susan's disappearance, Josh Powell exhibited several behaviors that raised suspicions among investigators. He withdrew large sums of money from Susan's retirement accounts, using a power of attorney form, and cancelled her scheduled chiropractic appointments. Additionally, friends reported that Josh had previously discussed methods of disposing of a body, specifically mentioning abandoned M shafts in Utah's West Desert as potential locations. These actions and statements contributed to the growing belief among investigators that Josh may have been involved in Susan's disappearance and raised questions about his intentions during this critical period. To make matters worse, Josh Powell took his sons Charlie and Braden and moved in with his father Steven Powell in Seattle. This arrangement raised concerns due to Susan's previous warnings about Steven's inappropriate behavior. Her desire to keep her children away from him. Despite these concerns, Josh chose to live with Steven, which further complicated the investigation into Susan's disappearance. Police suspected that Josh Powell's brother Michael may have helped dispose of Susan's remains after cadaver dogs detected human decomposition in his trunk. Investigators gathered evidence but were unable to definitively link Michael to Susan's disappearance. In 2018, Michael dispatched a letter to Susan's disappearance. In 2013, Michael Powell committed suicide, raising further questions about the family's involvement in the case following Susan's disappearance. Steven Powell, Josh's father, conducted a smear campaign against her, claiming she had run off with another man. This behavior drew scrutiny from investigators who examined Steven's past and uncovered his obsession with Susan. Evidence revealed that Steven had engaged in inappropriate conduct toward her and had made several disturbing remarks about her after she went missing. His actions contributed to the complex dynamics surrounding the investigation into Susan's disappearance in 2011. Steven Powell, the father of Josh Powell, was arrested for voyeurism in possession of child pornography. The arrest stemmed from an investigation into Steven's inappropriate behavior following the disappearance of his daughter-in-law, Susan. Law enforcement executed a search warrant at Steven's home in Pete, Washington, where they discovered numerous images and videos of women taken without their consent. Among the material seized were explicit photographs of Susan, which raised significant concerns about his obsession with her. The evidence collected during the arrest revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior that included stalking and harassment. This information brought renewed media attention to Susan's case and intensified scrutiny of the Powell family. Dynamics investigators began to reassess Steven's potential involvement in Susan's disappearance, considering his proximity to the family and his known fixation on her. As details of the charges emerged, concerns about the safety of Charlie and Braden intensified. Susan had previously expressed fears about her children being around Steven due to his past behavior following his arrest. Authorities faced pressure to ensure the boys were protected from any potential harm associated with their grandfather. As police scrambled to locate any signs of Susan, custody proceedings regarding Charlie and Braden Powell began. Despite Susan's parents, Chuck and Jod Hawks, pleading against granting custody to Josh, the state allowed him visitation rights. Concerns about Josh's behavior and the circumstances surrounding Susan's disappearance did not prevent the court from permitting these visits following Steven Powell's arrest on child pornography charges in 2011. The situation changed significantly. The state intervened and took custody of Charlie and Braden, removing them from Josh's care due to the serious allegations against their grandfather and ongoing investigations into their mother's disappearance. This decision was made in light of the potential risks to the children's safety, given the family dynamics. Legal battles ensued over the custody of the children. Amid these developments, Susan's parents sought to gain permanent custody, arguing that Josh posed a threat to their grandchildren due to his association with Steven and his questionable behavior following Susan's disappearance. The court proceedings highlighted the complexities of the case as investigators continued to gather evidence related to Susan's fate, while also addressing the immediate welfare of Charlie and Braden throughout this period. Public interest in the case remained high, with media coverage focusing on both the custody disputes and the unresolved questions surrounding Susan's disappearance. The ongoing legal struggles underscored the challenges faced by law enforcement as they attempted to navigate the investigation while ensuring the safety of the children involved. On February 5, 2012, a supervised visit was scheduled for Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden, with social worker Elizabeth Griffin Hall. The visit took place at Josh's home in Graham, Washington. During the visit, Josh locked Elizabeth out of the house shortly after she arrived. This action raised immediate concerns regarding the safety of the children once outside. Elizabeth attempted to gain entry but was unable to do so. While she waited for law enforcement to arrive, Josh set his house on fire using a flammable liquid. The fire quickly engulfed the home, and emergency responders were called to the scene. Tragically, Charlie and Braden died from carbon monoxide poisoning as a result of the fire. Investigators later found evidence indicating that both children had sustained injuries, suggesting that they were attacked before the fire was set. A hatchet was recovered near Josh's body, indicating that he may have used it to inflict these injuries. Authorities confirmed that the explosion was deliberate, and treated the case as a double murder-suicide. Local authorities reported that Josh's actions appeared premeditated, as he had withdrawn several thousand from his bank account shortly before the incident and had contacted friends via email to say goodbye. Additionally, he had donated his children's toys and books to local charities just a day prior following the incident. Investigators uncovered that 2 5-gallon cans of gasoline had been found on the premises, along with evidence that gasoline had been spread throughout the house. This discovery reinforced suspicions that Josh intended to destroy both himself and his children in a calculated act when authorities notified Steven Powell, who was incarcerated at the time. He reportedly did not seem very upset by the news, but expressed anger towards those who had informed him. 2 weeks later, Steven invoked his Fifth Amendment right to not answer questions regarding Susan's disappearance, raising further suspicion about his knowledge of the events. The incident prompted a thorough review of the social services involved in overseeing visits between Joshua and his children, highlighting potential failures and safeguarding measures that could have prevented this tragedy. Following the tragic event involving Josh Powell and his 2 sons, investigators delved into the circumstances that led to his drastic actions. The aftermath revealed a complex interplay of legal pressures, psychological evaluations, and troubling family dynamics that contributed to a narrative suggesting that Josh may have felt cornered. Josh was under significant legal scrutiny due to the ongoing investigation into Susan's disappearance. He faced custody battles concerning Charlie and Braden, which added considerable stress to a situation authorities had ordered him to undergo psychological evaluations as part of the custody proceedings, reflecting concerns about his mental stability and parenting capabilities. These evaluations aimed to assess his fitness as a parent, amid allegations of controlling behavior and potential involvement in Susan's disappearance. They became critical in understanding his state of mind leading up to the incident. The family dynamics within the Powell household were troubling. Josh's relationship with his father, Steven Powell, raised red flags due to Steven's inappropriate behavior, and the obsession with Susan. Investigators noted that Steven had conducted a smear campaign against Susan after her disappearance, claiming she had run off with another man. This hostile environment likely influenced Josh's action and mindset in the months leading up to the incident. Josh engaged in suspicious behavior that further alarmed investigators. Him withdrawing large sums of money from Susan's accounts and canceling her future appointments were enough to raise questions about his intentions. As soon as he was given the power of attorney over Susan's assets, he stopped cooperating with the law enforcement authorities and ran off to Seattle to spend Christmas with his kids. To make matters worse, he made statements about disposing of a body and mentioning abandoned mine shafts as potential locations for hiding. This raised further suspicions regarding his involvement in Susan's disappearance following the incident. Investigators focused on all of these aspects leading up to the fire. Evidence suggested that he may have felt cornered by legal pressures and the impending loss of custody of his children. Josh's suicide left many questions unanswered regarding Susan's fate and the extent of family involvement in her disappearance. Do you think Josh was responsible for Susan's disappearance alone, or were any of his family members involved? Despite Josh's death, law enforcement continued to investigate leads related to Susan's disappearance. They examined evidence from Powell's home and surrounding areas, but the absence of a body complicated the case nonetheless. Suspicion remained surrounding Josh and potentially other family members, as investigators sought to piece together the events leading up to Susan's disappearance on February 11, 2013. Michael Powell took his own life by jumping from the roof of a parking garage in Minneapolis, Minnesota. This tragic event occurred approximately 1 year after the deaths of his brother Josh and Josh's 2 sons, Charlie and Braden, prior to his suicide. Michael had been questioned multiple times by police, In 2008, 12 after his abandoned Ford was discovered at an Oregon wrecking yard, authorities described him as evasive regarding the circumstances surrounding his vehicle following the deaths of Josh and the boys. Utah authorities speculated that both Joshua and Michael were accomplices in the murder of Susan Powell. Investigators noted suspicious behaviors from both brothers during their inquiries into Susan's disappearance, leading to ongoing speculation about their involvement. Michael's death added another layer of complexity to the investigation, leaving many questions unanswered regarding the family's role in Susan's fate. On July 1, 2013, the West Valley City Police officially closed their active investigation into Susan Powell's disappearance. This decision followed extensive inquiries and the tragic deaths of Josh Powell and his two sons, Charlie and Braden. Despite the closure, the case remained a focal point of public interest. Speculation, as many questions about Susan's fate lingered. The police maintained that they believed Josh was involved in her disappearance. But, without evidence or a body, the investigation could not proceed further. In February 2013, Manley, who conducted psychological valuations of Josh Powell for Washington authorities, acknowledged his suspicions regarding Joshua's involvement in Susan's disappearance. Despite these concerns, Manley did not include suspicions in his official reports because they were beyond the scope of his duties and because Josh had not been charged with any wrongdoings at that time in March. All right, folks, buckle up, because this case just keeps getting messier, crazier, and somehow even more tragic. So let's fast forward to 2015. By this point, Susan's dad, Chuck Cox, had been in an all-out legal battle with Josh's sister Alina Powell and her shady crew because, of course, she's on Team Josh, over control of Susan's estate. Why? Well, Alina and her squad wanted Susan declared legally dead so they could cash in on her life insurance policies. Classy, right? But Chuck wasn't about to let them walk away with his daughter's legacy. After a brutal court fight, Chuck emerged victorious, gaining full control of the estate to ensure Susan's assets would actually go towards supporting her children and honoring her family's wishes. But wait, it gets juicier. The Cox family wasn't done fighting. Nope, not by a long shot. They turned their sights on Washington's Department of Social and Health Services, Guess H, and its social workers. Why? Because they believed these people prioritized Josh Powell's so-called parental rights over the actual safety of Susan and Josh's two boys, Charlie and Braden. And here's the thing. After all the horrifying red flags Josh had raised, you'd think DSHS would have seen this coming. But they didn't. In 2015, the Cox family's lawsuit hit a major roadblock. Translation: they weren't responsible. Oof. But in 2019, things flipped when an appeals court said, "Hold up, maybe we should take another look." And that's when a jury stepped in, took one look at the mess DSHS had left behind, and ruled that, yup, they were negligent as hell. The jury awarded a staggering $98 million to the estates of Charlie and Braden Powell, a number so big it probably gave DSHS a migraine. But this case wasn't just about legal wins or losses. The Cox family wasn't here for the money. They were here to make sure no other family ever went through this nightmare again. They started pressuring lawmakers in Washington and Utah to pass laws restricting visitation rights for parents under investigation for murder. And honestly, after everything that happened, who could blame them? Their advocacy efforts sparked serious conversations about how to better protect kids stuck in dangerous custody battles. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room: Susan. As of March 2018, people were still debating whether she should be declared legally dead even though it's widely believed that Josh killed her. But here's the problem. Her body has never been found. Theories about what happened to her range from hidden in a mine shaft to Josh went full Breaking Bad on us. In early 2022, a cave exploration crew searched a mine shaft in Utah, hoping for answers. They found rib bones and scraps of clothing. For a moment, it seemed like they'd finally cracked the case. But nope. DNA testing revealed the remains weren't Susan's, they were animal bones. As for the pants they found, they had traces of male DNA, but so far, nobody knows who they belong to. So here we are, over a decade later, and the investigation into Susan's disappearance is still wide open. With Josh dead since 2012, there's no one to hold accountable, and that just sucks. But here's where you come in. What do you think? Is Susan alive somewhere, hiding from the insanity that surrounded her life? Or did Josh murder her like everyone suspects? And if so, what the hell happened to her body? Let me know in the comments below, because this case will keep you up at night.